Morning, everyone. Hello, thank you all for joining us this morning. We're going to wait for a couple minutes here just to let any stragglers trickle in, and then we'll get started. Okay, I feel like everybody's here with us. So we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone, to today's Simbli Basics webinar. I hope you all had a great winter break and that everybody's back and ready, refreshed for the to come back to work. Today, we are going to talk about the basics of the Simbli platform. We're going to talk about the functions that you guys are going to use most often in your policy work with Simbli. And then we're also going to go over the MSBA update process and what that's going to look like and how Simbli is going to interact with that process. So let's start by talking a little bit about what Simbli is and why we at MSBA think it's a great fit for policy. So I'll begin by talking a little bit about how we used to do things. So prior to the current age of cloud-based computing, MSBA retained your policy manual on our servers, and your editor was basically responsible for providing you with PDFs of any policies that were revised or new policies, things like that. So now we have moved from keeping your policy manual on our servers to having it online. So that offers us a number of advantages. First and foremost, that means that your policy manual is now accessible at all times from anywhere in the world to anyone who wants to see your district's policies. So if you have a stakeholder in your community previously, before our cloud-based system here, that person, if they wanted to see your policy on, Narcan or just anything, would have to come into maybe your central office, and you would have a printed book there that they would have to flip through to find that policy. Uh, and for you, that would mean that, because you had a physical book, anytime a policy was revised, you would have to pull a page out of that manual and you'd have to replace it with the revised copy of the policy. Simbli dispenses with all of that. So a stakeholder in your community who wants to see your policy on something can be given the URL for your Simbli site, and then they can go there and they can, look at any policy that your board has adopted. Oh, before I continue, I apologize. I forgot about this. Allison Williams, my fellow editor, Allison, is with us this morning as well, and she's going to be monitoring the chat. So if you guys have any questions, go ahead and feel free to put them in there, and then we'll try to address them in a Q&A session at the end. And then also, we have a form that Allison is going to post in the chat for you guys that you can fill out and turn in for credit for the Board Secretary Academy. She'll put that in there here at the beginning, and then we'll pop it in there for you again at the end for anybody who maybe missed it. Okay, so we'll continue talking here about Simbli's advantages. So the big thing is that your manual is now online. Anyone can come here and look at it at any time and see the policies and procedures and regulations that your board has adopted. Okay, so that's the big advantage. And a really nice thing about that, there's two sort of really good results of that. One is that having a Simbli manual qualifies or satisfies the requirements of the Missouri Sunshine Law. And what that means is that you don't have to have those printed manuals in your central office or in your building offices anymore. As we all know, like the manuals are there's a lot of pages, and so that represented a pretty significant amount of paper, not to mention the amount of, just labor and kind of having to keep track of things for you whenever something was updated. Now, the moment the board adopts a policy, you can notify your human policy editor here at MSBA, and they will update your Simbli site, and immediately that the new revised policy replaces the old one. So you don't have any pages to pull out. You don't have anything to print. You don't have to do anything. It's all done. Another really nice advantage of having your manual online is that it is fully searchable. So if someone wants to know your policy about something, previously you would have had to flip through your manual. You'd have to find it yourself, and that could be pretty time consuming. Now, Simbli offers a search function, so you can very easily search for language across your own policy manual. And this is pretty cool too. You can search the manual of any district that has a Simbli site for sample language. And we'll show you how to do that. Let's see here. So some of the other advantages, you can print out or download PDFs of policy documents at any time. Previously, when we released an update, your editor would send you a packet of PDFs that you could then provide to the board. But if you ever needed a copy of a policy, you would have to contact your editor and then wait for them to get back to you. That's no longer a factor. You can go onto your Simbli site, you can download or print a copy of anything, an adopted policy, a draft of a policy that's being revised, whatever you want. You can also visit your Simbli site to see any policy drafts that are awaiting board review. Previously, you'd have to contact your editor, say, what do I have pending? Now you can go to your Simbli site and you can just go to your work in progress page and you can see anything that is awaiting board review. Now, I will offer a little bit of a caveat when we talk about that because we're sort of still in an ongoing long transition to Simbli, some of you may have pending documents that are not in your work in progress yet, but for the most part, if you want to know where you're at with regards to your policy updates, all you have to do is go to your Simbli site and you can see at a glance. And then finally, via your Simbli site, you can access sample versions of all of MSBA's policies, procedures, and forms. And I'll show you how to do that in just a moment. So we're going to break up today's content into two categories. We're going to talk about what you are going to need to do in Simbli, and then we're going to talk about what your human policy editor here at MSBA will do for you. So what you're going to need to do, and what we're going to talk about today, is you're going to need to, of course, know how to log into Simbli. You're going to learn how to view, download, and print documents and drafts of documents if you want to take them before the board. We're going to talk about how to search for language in your manual, and then I'm going to show you how to access sample versions of all of MSBA's policies, procedures, and forms. So I want to, as we move into talking about what your human editor is going to do for you, I want to make sure everybody knows you can always contact us at any time if you have any questions at any stage of this process. I know I say that you need to know how to do these things, and eventually we would, of course, love for you to learn. But if you ever, forget, if you need a refresher course, always feel free to contact your policy editor. And if you're not sure who that is, just give us a call. So what your policy editor is going to do for you is anytime you need to make a revision to a policy, you can email that to your editor, and we will create a draft for you that will show the changes that you want to make using highlight, green highlight, and red highlight, and then strikeout to show what is being added and removed. And that's so the board can know what they're voting on. Basically, that draft, you can just print that out or download it and email it to your board members. We've got another option for presenting it to your board as well that we'll talk about. But essentially, that draft is something you can just hand to the board, and that way they will know what they're voting on. They can vote, then you let your editor know. Your editor will clean up that draft and publish it to your manual and automatically replace the old version. So you won't have to, assuming you don't keep, printed copies of your manual, you won't have anything to do after that. I know a lot of us do still like print, and a lot of your community members may as well. So I know that's going to be a thing. Probably some folks will continue to use a printed manual, but just to be clear, you don't have to do that anymore. Your editor can also add users to Simbli. So by default, most of you guys, if you only have Simbli's policy module, are going to have maybe 2 to 3 of what we call primary user accounts. And that'll probably be the superintendent and maybe the board secretary. Um, and then maybe whoever else. And those people can log into Simbli and they can view drafts. We can add as many users as you want who can view drafts. Okay, so for example, if your board members are tech savvy and you don't want to have to worry about printing out or downloading PDFs of your drafts to show them, you can contact your editor. We can create a user profile in your Simbli site for each of your board members, and then we can give the ability to view but not modify drafts. So all you have to do is just tell them what drafts they need to be looking at. They can log in on their own time and they can view those drafts online. And then of course, finally, if you ever need a refresher, if you would like a little bit of one-on-one training, I know some of us learn better that way, always feel free to contact your editor. We're happy to help however we can. So we're going to go ahead and switch over to viewing our Simbli site here. Today we're going to use success as our sample, success R6. So each of you guys will have been given a URL to your Simbli site, and it's probably going to be included on your district's website by now. If you forget how to navigate to your site, again, that's another thing you can contact your editor for. We're happy to give you the URL and help you get here. So right now, what I'm looking at is I'm looking at Success's Simbli site as a member of the public. I have not logged in, so this is what someone is going to see when they come to Success's Simbli site. And you can see we've got a number of different elements here. Right now we're looking at our board policy manual, which we can tell because it's labeled right up here in the upper left-hand corner. You can see we've got Success's logo and their branding. Below that, we have what we here in-house call the description box. This right here is just a place where you can have any text that you would like the public to see immediately upon arrival at the Simbli site. So if you're working in your site and you don't like what you see in this box, just let your editor know and we can change it to whatever you want. It could be your districts, maybe your school board meeting agendas, whatever you would like to do there. And then below that here, this is the manual itself. Okay. On the left, we have our table of contents, and this is fully interactive. You can use this to navigate between the sections of your manual just by clicking. Okay. And then we have all of our policies, procedures, and regulations over here in a handy little list. These are going to be, we've got rows and then columns, and each of these columns, we have a code column over here, title, type. These are what we call view filters, okay? And you can use these to narrow down what Simbli shows you within the manual. As these policy manuals are pretty long. There's a lot of stuff here, and scrolling through it can take time and can be a little bit confusing. So you can use these filters to narrow what you see. So if I know the code that I'm looking for, I can click here on this little magnifying glass, and I can type in that code. So let's say I know I'm looking for JHCD. And then when I hit enter, bam, it narrows me down so that I'm only seeing policies that have that code JHCD. Okay, so right now I have JHCD the policy, and then I have JHCDAP1, the procedure. And if I want to clear that filter, I just click in the little circle with the X here, and I'm back to seeing my whole manual. I can do the same thing with title. So if I know that I want to see my district's policy on administering medications to students, I can click here at the top of the title column, and then I can type in whatever I want to search by. In this case, I'm going to do medic. Now, it's only going to show the language that I type in here if it's in the title of the policy, not the body. So when I hit enter, you'll see it's pulled up. It's narrowed my view, so I can only see policies and procedures that have MEDIC in their title. Okay, so that would be one way I could find what I'm looking for if I was interested in seeing my district's policy on administering medication. I can also narrow my view over here by document type. You can see we have three different document types that you're going to be looking at. It's going to be four for some of you because some districts will include forms on their site. But for most of you, it's going to be policies, regulations, and administrative procedures. Policies are going to be designated with a P. Administrative procedures are going to be designated with an AP, and then regulations are going to be designated with an R. And the difference between policies, administrative procedures, and regulations is that policies require a board vote to change, and so do regulations. And APs do not. APs can be revised at the or adopted or rescinded at the discretion of the superintendent, so long as they don't contradict policy. So if I wanted to only see my procedures, I can click here on this little arrow, and then I can uncheck policy and regulation. And now you can see I'm only seeing my APs. And then to restore my view, click here, click here. I can also narrow by the date that the document was last revised or by the date that it was last reviewed. So the difference between these two, and you may already know this, but some boards will choose to do sort of a rotating review of their policy manual every year. They'll review it maybe section by section. If you do that, then you can let your editor know when the board has reviewed a document and opted not to revise it, and then we can add a last reviewed date here, which can be different from the last revised date. And then the final thing that a member of the public can do when they visit your site without a login is they can print out a table of contents for any section or for your entire manual, and they can print policies. So if they have a question, they can just print out a policy easily from their home computer. So this is what a person is going to see when they visit your site without a login. And all of what you see here are adopted. This all represents the board's adopted policies and procedures. Okay. So now if I log in, oh, and that's another thing. A member of the public can search your manual as well. Okay, so I'm gonna save discussing searching for later. We'll deal with that in detail. They can also Simbli integrates Google Translate. So if say you have maybe a Spanish speaking member of your community, they can click here on Translate. They can find Spanish, click on it, and you can see that Simbli does the best job it can of translating your manual into Spanish. Now, if you've ever used Google Translate, you're probably aware this is not flawless. Google Translate just kind of does the best it can, but this can maybe help someone, to get an idea at least of what your policy manual has to say about given topics. So I'm going to go back to show original here. Okay, and we'll go ahead and log in. So to log in, I'm going to click on this login button up here in the upper right-hand corner. I'm going to type in my user ID. Today, I am going to be operating as Board Secretary Jane Doe. Now, if it's your first time visiting your Simbli site, you may not have set up a password yet. So you can do that by clicking on login and then just click forgot your password. So if it's your first time, or even if you just can't remember your password, just click on forgot your password. You'll be taken to a page where you can type in your email address. Now you have to make sure that it is the email address that we have on file for you. So if you attempt to use this system and it doesn't work, contact your editor. It may be that we have an outdated email address for you. But once I type in my email address and click send, Simbli is going to generate an email that will walk me through the steps of setting up my password. And if this is my first time accessing the site, setting security questions as well. Okay, but for now, I know my user information, so I'm going to go ahead and type it in. and the system will log me in. So now I can tell that I'm logged in because I can see my name up here in the upper right-hand corner. And you can see immediately that we're being shown a lot more information. So a logged in user, in addition to, now we're seeing a status column here, right? In addition to adopted policies, a logged in user can also, who has permission to do so, they have to be given permission, can also view policies that are in draft status. Okay, there's two statuses here that you're going to want to need to keep in mind, and they've added status as a filter. So now we have a few other options here, right? We have course code and title. We have type. We also have status. And if I click on this little down arrow here, you can see there are going to be a number of statuses here. There's really only two or three that you need to worry about. These submitted in review and reviewed, these are artifacts of an old system that right now MSBA is not using. So the only ones you need to worry about are going to be adopted, draft, and then sometimes rescind. So whenever your board rescinds a document, it remains in Simbli in rescinded status, but is not visible to the public. So rescinded documents and drafts are not going to be visible to the public. They're only going to be visible to users that have logins and who have been given permission by your policy editor to view them. But I can do things like here now, I could, for example, I could uncheck adopted, and I could only see documents that are in draft status. So this is, for example, this is one way that I could see where my district is at with regards to its policy updates, if there's anything that my board still needs to review. I could choose to only view adopted, or I could even choose to only view rescinded documents. Now, I don't think that Success has any of those currently. So, for the most part, the system is going to default to having rescinded documents unchecked here. So you usually will not see those. You have to go here and deliberately tell the system you want to see your rescinded documents. You can also see that we have some other options over here. We can filter by original adopted date, and we can also filter by rescinded date if we want to. We have a nice little tool here in reset filter sort. So for example, let's say that I narrow my view down of I only want to see my APs. Maybe I only have it set to show drafts. If I want to go back to the default, as a logged in user, I can click reset filter sort, automatically sets me back to my default view permissions. It clears all my filters. Okay. I have some other options over here as well. I can choose to toggle certain filters on or off. And what that means is that will, if I toggle these off, like I see mostly Success does not have last review dates. They don't have rescinded dates. So I could toggle those off and they disappear. So if you like if you maybe like a cleaner view, you can turn off some of these filters if you like to do that. And then, of course, just like with the logged in user, we have the ability to print. We're going to talk about this in detail because this is, of course, something you're going to probably be doing a lot in order to take policy drafts before the board. So to view any policy, and of course, users without a login can do this as well, I'm going to click on its title. Okay, so I click here on school district legal status, and that will open this policy in the viewer. Now, ordinarily, like a non-logged in user will will have, let's see, yeah, there we go. Okay. So I guess okay, I'm logged in as Jane Doe. Sorry, when I'm logged in as myself, I see some options up here that you guys won't get, but that doesn't matter right now. So this is what you guys will see when you look at a given policy. You'll see you've got the policy title up here. We've got the original adopt date. You'll also see the last revised date if that's here, and then we have the content of the policy. Now I can do a couple of things. If I just want to print this one policy, I can click the print button here and simply will let me print just this one policy. Again, we're going to cover printing in more detail in a moment. I can also use these arrows to navigate between my documents if I want to. Okay, so this is what an adopted policy is going to look like. And if I want to view a draft, you can click the title of that as well here. And then this is what we're going to see when we look at a policy draft. Now, each of these drafts is going to start with an explanation that shows what's changing. We'll talk about drafts in a little bit more detail when we talk about the update process. But for now, just know that when you see this yellow highlighted bar and you see the word draft over here, what you're seeing is a draft that shows revisions that the board has yet to approve. You're going to see that anything that's in green here is being added, anything that's in red is being removed. So And then I can print this draft from here if I just want to print the one. But that's kind of how we're going to navigate, how we can filter our view, stuff like that. So next up, let's talk about how we might go about printing or downloading documents in Simbli. So like I said just a second ago, if I only want to print policy AA, I can do it from the viewer. I can click the print button here. Simbli takes me to a print page where I can set toggles for what I want to include in the printout. But usually, you're probably going to be wanting to print multiple documents at once. So we'll focus on that. I'll show you how to do that here. And when I say print, what we're actually going to be doing is we're going to create, Simbli will create a PDF of the documents that we want, and then we can either download or print those. So it's printing to PDF, and then you can either print that PDF in a hard copy or you can download. So to do that, there's a few different ways I can do it, but we're gonna start very general here. We're gonna start from the board policy manual. We're gonna have all selected over here, and then we're gonna click the print button. And we have two options. We can print a table of contents or we can print policies. We're gonna start today by talking about printing policies because that's what you're gonna be doing most often. So I click on print policies, takes me to a print page, and you can see I have a lot of options here. I have some toggles and I have some checkboxes. We're going to start up here by telling Simbli what kind of documents we want to print and if there are any dates we want to filter by. And then we're going to drill down and we're going to talk about what specific policies and procedures we want to print. So to begin with, let's just say, for example, that I want to create a printout of a group of policies and procedures, maybe coming from an update to take before the board. So first, I'm going to tell Simbli what kind of documents I want to print using these toggles up here. If they're green and the circle is on the right, they're toggled on. If they're gray and the circle is on the left, and they're toggled off. Okay, so in most cases, I'm going to want to print policies, regulations, and procedures. You're going to see that forms is an option here, but if your district does not include forms on the Simbli site, you don't have to worry about turning it off. It's not going to cause a problem at all. In this case, let's say that I want to only print policies and regulations. So I can toggle off administrative procedures and administrative forms. Now I only have policies and regulations toggled on. Next, I can filter documents by status. So I can use this pull-down menu here that defaults to having all of the statuses checked except rescind. Earlier, I mentioned that submitted in review and reviewed are artifacts that are no longer used. You don't have to worry about unchecking those. They will not cause a problem. You can just completely ignore them and just worry about adopted in drafts. So if I'm going to take this before the board, I only want to print policies that are in draft status. I am going to go ahead and toggle these off, just force a habit. And now we'll see when we go down here that it's going to change our view a little bit. So then we have the option to filter by date. If you want to do that, I find that that's not, I mean, that you may find a use case for this. And if you want to do it, all you have to do is basically you can set whether you want it to be like the last revised date, and then you can say, I only want to see policies that were revised before or after a certain date. You click here, it brings up a little calendar. From here, it's fairly self-explanatory. You can use these arrows to move between month to month. You can use the pull-down menus to select a different year. So I could say, maybe I want to see the documents that I adopted between January 15th of maybe like 2022 and we'll say March of 2023. Okay, so that would be how I could use that. In this case, I don't want to do that because you can, when I click expand all down here, you can see there's nothing. So I'm going to toggle filter by date off. Next, I have the option to include some things in my printout. I can include footnotes, and footnotes are going to be the legal references to statutes or constitutional articles or court cases down here, and then are going to be also the cross references to other policies and procedures that pertain to the documents that I'm going to print. Some boards will be interested in seeing these, others will not. Generally speaking, I personally tend to think you should default to leaving them turned on, but it's really, you know your boards way better than I do. So if you don't think that they will care about the legal references and cross references, you can toggle this off and those will not be included in the printout. Supporting documents here, We at MSBA do not currently make use of supporting documents, but you do not have to worry about toggling this off. It won't cause a problem to leave it on. And then you can choose to include a table of contents if you're printing more than one document at a time. Personally, I love this feature. I think boards will love it too, and I'll show you why in a moment once we do a sample printout. It just makes the the document much easier to navigate. Same goes for page numbers. You can include page numbers or not include them as you desire. I always default to including them. I think boards will really appreciate that. You can also include the printed date and time. That would be the date and time that we create the PDF here. And then you can include, we don't, right now, MSBA does not use inline comments. So, you don't really need to worry about this option. Then finally, we can include a watermark and footer text on our printout. And what that's going to be, a watermark is going to be large text that is behind the text of the policies and procedures that you're printing. So for example, I might put as my watermark like draft, or maybe the update that the documents are from. Then footer text is going to be text that is included at the bottom of each page of the printout. So I might put, the update. If I'm printing all of the documents in an update in one big packet from my board, I could use the footer to identify the document that, or excuse me, the update that they're part of. Okay, so we've set all of our toggles up the way we want them. Now we're going to drill down and we're going to tell Simbli specifically what documents we want to print. And to do that, we're going to use these checkboxes. You can see we've got a checkbox for each of your sections of your manual. And then we have a little arrow here. If I click there, that expands that section. So now I'm seeing all of the documents that match how I have my toggles set up that are within that section. Okay. I can do this with each individual section. I can also uncheck sections if I want to, so that I'm only printing from one specific section. I can also check or uncheck. If I expand here, I can check or uncheck specific documents within that section to appear in my printout. And later on, when we talk about the MSBA policy update process, we're going to find that this becomes very useful, because this is how I will tell Simbli, I want to print only the documents that are part of an update. Now, in addition to checking and unchecking manually, I can also use the uncheck or select all links up here. I can also choose to expand all the sections or collapse them. Okay, so right now I'm looking at what I'm going to print out here. So for our sample, I'm going to unselect all, and I'm just going to tell Simbli I want to print out, we'll say 3 policies, just so I can quickly show you guys what a printout's going to look like. So once I've checked the documents that I want to print, I scroll up, or I can also scroll down, and I'll find my print button. I'm going to click that, and then Simbli is going to tell me my documents are being prepared, they're being processed, and I can either stay on this page and wait for them to process, or I can continue and I can work in Simbli while they process in the background. Because I only selected 3, it's pretty fast. So now Simbli has gone ahead and opened up the PDF that it's just created for me that I can then download or print. And as you can see, I've got my watermark here. Simbli provides a cover sheet. You can see there's my footer text, and there's my page numbers. This is the table of contents that I asked Simbli to produce for me. You can see it tells the reader what page each of these documents begins on, and this is really cool too. So because this is a PDF, Simbli also creates an interactive digital table of contents over here that my board members, if I email this to them rather than printing it and providing it to them as a hard copy, can use to navigate between the drafts. This is a sanity saving measure for you and your board members. Okay, so that is what it looks like when we print out multiple documents. Now, there are so many different ways to print in Simbli. I showed you how to print from the board policy manual with all selected here. If I have a section selected when I print, then Simbli will automatically narrow down my checkbox options here. If I go into an individual document, I have a print button over here. If I click that, you can see now I only have toggles because Simbli knows that I only want to print policy CB. Okay. And you can print or download. I'll show you how to do that here. I'm just going to go ahead and leave all my toggles off and just go to this one document here. What you're going to want to do is look in the upper right-hand corner. This little button here lets you download. And then this little button here lets you print. Okay. So that is the process of printing and downloading policy documents from Simbli. And probably for most of you, that's a lot of what you're going to be doing in the system, is printing stuff out for your board to review. Okay, so that's the board policy manual page. We're going to talk about some of the other areas of Simbli that you may want to visit and how to navigate to them. So first and foremost, let me show you the little house icon up here. That will always take you back to the board policy manual page. So if you navigate somewhere else, you can always come back here. This little bell icon, this is where notifications will live. So for example, let's say that I had printed out, maybe I printed out my entire manual. That's a huge document. It's going to take Simbli a while to process. So while that process is in the background, I can still be working. And once it's finished, I'll see a little number come up here over the bell to let me know that that's done. Okay, so some of my other options up here. We'll talk about searching in detail momentarily. We're going to talk about these links right here first. Okay, so we've got About Us, which is information about your district. And then to the right of that, you've got your policies link. Now, some of you guys may have modules other than Simbli, and so you'll have links to up here, maybe to things like documents or meetings. Simbli is not just policies. They offer modules for all kinds of different things. And what's really neat about it is those modules all integrate. So if you have the meetings module, you can set up your board meeting agendas in Simbli, and then you can automatically attach drafts to those board meeting agendas. Today, we're just going to focus on policy, but if you want to know more about that, you can contact Charlie Rigby at Simbli, and let's see here. I'll see if we can put his contact in. Allison, would you put Charlie's contact information in the chat, please? Charlie's a very nice guy, and I'm sure he would love to talk to you. Okay, so, but for now, we're just going to talk about policies. So if you mouse over policies, you're going to see we have some options here. We have our work in progress page, and then we have our board policy manual. That's what we're looking at right now. That's just an easy way to navigate back there. And then we have the MSBA core manual. We'll talk about that here in a minute. To the right of that, we have more. If you mouse over more, you're going to see my profile. If you go to my profile, then you can change things like your first name, your last name. Maybe you get married, you have to change your last name. You can do that here. You can change your email address for this account. And this email address that you have here is going to be where Simbli will send any password reset requests, anything like that you want to make. You can fill in your title, all this kind of stuff if you want to do that. You can change your user ID. Now, by default, your user ID is going to be the first letter of your first name followed by your last name. And generally, I would recommend that you leave that as is. Just in case you forget, you can always contact your editor, and assuming you haven't changed it, we can just remind you of that. You have the option to set your security questions here as well. Okay, so that's what you can do there. And then Simbli product updates is going to tell you about new changes coming to Simbli. So let's talk about some of the other stuff we see under policies here. We've got the work in progress page. I'll go ahead and click there to take me there. The work in progress page is a handy list of all of the pending drafts that have yet to be adopted by your district. Okay, so in addition to, now you can see the same list from the board policy manual page as well using view filters. So if I want to work from the board policy manual page, all I have to do is come over here to status, and I can uncheck everything except draft, and now I'm seeing the same list. But there is some information you can get on the work in progress page that you won't get on the board policy manual page. And specifically, that is going to be the last modified by date. Okay, so if I want to know when a draft was created or who created it, I can come to the work in progress page, and I can look right over here to last modified by, and I can see that these drafts were created by editor Allison Williams, and they were created on the 11th of December, 2024. You can see I have view filters here, just like I have on the board policy manual page. So I could also choose to only see my drafts of APs if I want to do that, or only regulations or policies, or all three. I can also search here. So again, I'm going to do JHCD, and I can find just the drafts of JHCD. And I do that by typing that into this field here and hitting enter. So a lot of your options on the work in progress page are going to be the same, but the main thing you're going to want to visit the work in progress page for is maybe to see what are your oldest drafts in Simbli. You know, when were they created? And much as with the board policy manual page, I have the reset filter link right there. And I can view the contents of any of these by clicking on the title, just like I could from the board policy manual page. But all I'm going to see in work in progress is drafts. Okay. So I mentioned earlier that some of you, if you have been with MSBA for a really long time, like before we use Simbli, you may have some pending documents that won't be in your work in progress or won't be in Simbli yet. So if you're ever in here and you think that you're missing something, or if you ever would like a complete list of what is pending, always feel free to contact your policy editor and we can provide one for you. Okay, so next we're going to talk about the MSBA core manual. So the core manual, when I click here, my branding up here won't change. My colors are going to stay the same and I'll still have my logo, but I can tell I'm looking at the core manual by looking right here. Okay. MSBA core manual is a repository of standard language for every policy and procedure that MSBA offers. Okay. So what that means is that there are going to be some documents here that may not be on your district's Simbli site because we have different policies for districts with different needs. Okay, so there is different legislation for districts that are in the St. Louis area than for the rest of the state, for example. So we might have one version of a policy that's for St. Louis. We might have another one for everybody else. We might have one for example, let's see here. I'm going to turn off forms. You know, we might have one version for districts that do things. Yeah, here we go. Urban districts. So this is for the St. Louis area. We might have one version of a policy for districts that uh, are located in charter counties, things like that. So by the time your editor provides you with a policy, they've already chosen the right one for your district. If you ever have any questions or concerns about that, though, of course, feel free to contact your editor and we can explain why you have one version over another. But when we provide you with a draft, it's going to be the one that we believe is right for your district. Okay. So it's already been set up for you in that way. But if you ever want to see MSBA's standard language for any kind of document, you can come here to the MSBA core manual and you can navigate through it just like you do through your own policy manual. You know, you can use view filters, and you're going to see there's some other stuff here. So a lot of you are only going to have policies, procedures, and regulations on your Simbli site. But if you come to the core manual, you can also get forms. Okay, we keep samples of all of our forms in the MSBA core manual. And so this is going to be a great way for you to come and get those. Now, I will tell you that maintenance of your district's individual forms and customization of those forms is not part of full maintenance policy service. Okay, so that is going to be something that you will be responsible for. So your editor will be happy to upload PDFs of any form that you have customized to your Simbli site as long as it matches up with MSBA's coding structure. But you don't necessarily need to do that if you are comfortable downloading sample forms from Simbli and then customizing them yourself. And you're going to do that by clicking on the title of the form. And these are going to look a little different from policies, regulations, and procedures because forms are always uploaded as a PDF or a Word document. Okay, so by default, I'm looking at the PDF and I can scroll through it here. But if I want to access a Word version of this form, I look for see more here, click on that, and I have a link to a docx version of this form that I can then download and customize to suit my district. So some districts choose to keep forms on their Simbli site that are customized for their district, but I will sometimes I will actually encourage people not to do that and just to come here and get a copy of a form whenever they need one, because what's here in the core manual is always going to be the most up-to-date version of every one of these documents that MSBA offers. Okay. The problem with keeping forms on your Simbli site is that because maintenance of those forms is not part of full maintenance service, your editor is not going to be keeping track of those for you. And it's really easy. You guys all know how busy you are, and it's super easy to forget to download a new copy of a form when it's revised. And we'll talk about how forms are provided as part of the policy update process in a little bit here. But anytime you want the most up-to-date version of a form, you can always come to your Simbli site, mouse over policies, click on MSBA Core Manual, come to the Core Manual, and all of the forms are there. Now, there's going to be different versions of some of these forms. If you ever need to know which version you need, just feel free to contact your editor, and we're more than happy to help you with that. And again, I know we're throwing a lot of information at you today. So if you need a refresher, or if you just, if you just get into Simly and you can't remember what to do, call your editor. I like to say call your editor a lot. You can always feel free to call us. We're very lonely and we love to hear from you guys. So please never hesitate to contact us if you need any kind of help. Okay, so that's the core manual. Just know that this is going to be what you see here is going to be standard versions, standard uncustomized versions of every policy and procedure that MSBA offers to all districts. There will be some policies and procedures that we may have that we call supplemental that are not commonly needed enough that we provide them by default to new districts that join service, but that some districts may want. So if you're looking at your manual and you think there's a policy that should be there that isn't, always feel free to contact your editor. And maybe we have a version of that that we can let your board look at if your district thinks that they need it. Okay, so now let's talk about one of the coolest features of Simbli, the search function. So from my board policy manual, actually anywhere in Simbli, I'm going to have this search button up here in the upper right-hand corner. If I want to search for language in my manual, let's say for maybe a member of my community has called me and has asked me, what's your policy regarding, let's say Narcan. Narcan was kind of a hot button issue for a while, a few years ago. So maybe a parent is concerned, or maybe they want to know if your district stocks EpiPens, things like that. So how would I find that out? So there's a couple of ways. Of course, I could use view filters to narrow my view if I know the policy that I'm looking for, or if I just want to find language pertaining to Narcan, I can click the search button either up here or down here at the bottom. Click here to perform a search, and it's going to bring up this search window. Now, Simbli's search feature is really super robust, and we could probably dedicate an entire webinar to how to find individual things. So we're going to kind of cover this pretty generally today, but I'll try to give you guys enough to kind of get you started. You can come in here and play with the search feature all you want. You're in no danger of hurting anything or breaking anything. So if I want to search for Narcan, let's say I want to know what my district's policy is regarding Narcan, I can, in the field here, I can click and I can type in Narcan. Now I have some radio buttons here that allow me to tell Simbli kind of how I want to search. Let's say that I don't know, maybe my district refers to Narcan as naloxone, its generic name. Okay, so I can type in Narcan naloxone, and then now if I search for exact phrase, Simbli is going to search for Narcan naloxone, these two words in sequence, just as I have typed them in up here. I could search for all of these words, which means it's only going to show me policies that include both the words Narcan and naloxone in any order anywhere in the document, or I can search for any of these words. So I could search for a policy that has only Narcan or only naloxone using this setup here. And you can put as many search keywords as you want up here. You do not have to separate them by commas, just put a space between them and Simbli knows what to do from there. So for now, I'm going to search for all of these words in this manual. Then below that, I have radio buttons for searching this site, in other words, just successes manual, or this site and other sites, in which case I can search for any district's policy manual anywhere in the country that has their stuff set up in Simbli. Okay, so for now, we'll search this site. I have toggles over here where I can search within specific modules. Like I mentioned earlier, some of you guys may have modules other than policy. If you only want to search policy, you'll toggle those off. Success only uses the policy modules, so we don't have to worry about that here. Then we have pull-down menus for policy types and sections. Now, policy types, this is a little bit confusing. Simbli refers to your manual, your board policy manual as a policy type. Okay. So when I click on this little pull down, I have the option to search either or both of my board policy manual or MSBA's core manual. For now, I only want to search my policy manual, so I'm going to uncheck MSBA core manual. And that way I won't get a bunch of search results that are standard language that I don't care about. Now I can also, if I know what section I want to search in, I can use this pull down right here. I can search if I want to do that. So like I might say JHCD. Now, okay, so what the search here is going to do is it's going to search for different sections. So, but in order, as you might see here right now, all we have is a board policy manual. So how do I see all of my sections? There's a little arrow right here. I click that. Now I'm seeing a list of all of my sections. So I could search for maybe students. And there you go. This is a view filter just like what you have in the board policy manual page and the work in progress. And when I clear that out, I'm seeing everything. For now, I'm going to operate under the assumption that I don't know what section this is in. So I'm just going to leave all these checked. And then I'm going to click on search. And here we go. So Simbli has generated a list of search results. It's found one adopted policy, one adopted procedure, and a draft of a policy. And it's arranged this for me right here. Much as with the board policy manual page, I have view filters that I can turn on or off to narrow my view or expand my view. I can use pull down menus here to only see drafts if I want to, or to see everything. And then I can click on the title to view the content of the document in question. So another nice thing Simbli does, it's going to helpfully highlight instances of any of my keywords here in the content. And then if I want to just navigate straight to that policy, maybe I want to print it out, I can click go to this policy, Simbli will open it in a new tab. And here I am, I'm viewing the policy. Okay, so that would be how you would locate language in your own policy manual. Now, if I want to perform another search, I click here, this little arrow right next to search criteria. I can click clear all, clears out all my search criteria. So let's say that I want to know how other districts handle Narcan. Maybe I'm in the process of formulating what my procedure is going to be like, and I want to know what other districts do. So for this, I'm going to just go ahead and leave Narcan here. I'm going to select turn on the, now I'm going to, instead of clicking search this site, I'm going to click search this site and other sites. Now I've expanded my options here. So you can search the meeting, planning, communication, or documents modules belonging to other districts, even if you don't have those modules yourself. So you could search for board meeting minutes for another district that you're curious about if you wanted to do that. These are all public documents, so there's no problem with that here. So, but for now, we're going to search only policies, and I'm going to search this site and other sites. I have a number of other ways to filter my results over here. We're filtering our results with these, not our view. So I have pull downs for the state, and I can search for documents for districts that have Simbli sites anywhere in the United States. Okay. Now, I will caution you, if you're searching for sample language in other states, legislation can differ pretty dramatically between states. So you want to really be cautious about, taking sample language from a state other than Missouri. But you do have the option of searching all these various states. By default, we're only going to search Missouri. You just check the box of any state you want to search in. You can filter your results by organization, and when Simbli says organization, it means school district. You can see we have a complete list of all of MSBA's full maintenance member districts here in the state of Missouri. So I could search any and all of these by checking or unchecking boxes. By default, it searches all of them. I can narrow my search results by student population. Now, this is interesting. So let's say that I'm a tiny district, maybe I'm a small district, I only have like maybe 450 students in my entire district. To me, it doesn't really matter. I don't really care about what districts in St. Louis are doing. So I can narrow my search results so that I only see districts that have a similar population to my own. By default, Simbli is going to search all of them. I'm going to go ahead and leave all of these checked for the time being, but just know that you can narrow your search results by student population if you need to. And you can also narrow your search results by region. MSBA separates the state of Missouri into 17 regions. You can see a map by clicking on this little link right here. And you can find your district in here. So maybe you're only interested in seeing what other districts that are in your vicinity are doing. Maybe you're in Platte County and you only care about what's happening in Region 4. You can narrow your results by region by using this pull down. We're going to leave that alone for the time being. Okay, so I've set it up so that I'm going to be searching for Narcan in the policy module of every MSBA full maintenance member site. And when I'm done, I click search and Simbli generates my results. Now this is going to be a long list of results here. So once again, I can use view filters to narrow what I'm seeing. By default, all of these are going to be condensed so that I'm only seeing a list of districts. But if I want to expand the results for any district, I can click this little arrow right here next to it and it'll expand it out. Or if I want to expand all of them, I can click the double arrow right here. Okay. So for example, maybe I want to see Afton, Alton R4s, documents that pertain to Narcan. So I can expand them. I click the title, and then I can use my arrow keys to move between, or my arrow buttons, excuse me, to move between results. Once again, Simbli is going to helpfully show me in the instance of my keyword. Now this is pretty neat. So right now I'm looking at Alton R4's policy JHCD. Say I want to look at this in their manual. I click on go to this policy, Simbli in a new tab. It opens Alton R4's Simbli policy manual, and it takes me straight to that document. And then from here, I can navigate out and I can look at Alton's entire policy manual. So if you ever want to see another district's policy manual, that's a great way to do it. You can just search and then click go to this policy. So as you can see, I mean, you have all kinds of different options for narrowing your search results in Simbli. It's searching, as we all know, in the age of Google is as much art as science. So sometimes less is more. So if you're searching up here in search criteria, maybe I don't know, again, like I just want to find maybe the word medicine in my policy manual. So I might just type in medic up here and have a better shot at finding it that way. So just play with it, get you and you'll pick it up in no time. You'll get used to it very quickly. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about MSBA's policy update process. So MSBA produces about 1, 2, maybe 4 or 5 policy updates each year. Okay, and these policy updates are going to be collections of drafts that reflect changes in recent legislation or in kind of MSBA's philosophy. We're always looking at our policies to find ways that in which we can make them maybe more comprehensible, more readable, more user-friendly, and also how we can keep them up to date with the ever-changing world of education law. Our legislature is very active right now, so we're putting out a lot of updates every year. So when you receive a policy, when a new policy update is ready, your editor is going to send you an email. I'll show you what that's going to look like here. Okay, so you'll get an email that looks something like this from your policy editor. It'll say something like maybe your district name, new MSBA policy update, and then it will show the update code. Now we code our updates by the last 2 digits of the year, followed by an alphabetical character corresponding to the sequence of the update in that year. Okay, so this is the email that I send out for the 24D update. Different editors may have emails that look a little bit different, but this is generally speaking what you're gonna want to look out for. Okay, so what this means is that this is the 4th policy update in 2024. 24D. And an email like this will have a brief explanation and introduction here telling you, we're providing you with the 2024D updated policies and procedures and where the drafts are located, in the case of my email here. It'll give you a brief description of what is included in the update and why, and then anything unusual that you might need to know immediately about the update can also be included in this email as well. There will also be some attachments to the email. At minimum, there will be a checklist, which you'll be able to identify by looking for the .chk at the end. And this checklist, we'll talk about what it's used for shortly, but the short version is that the checklist will include a list of the policies, procedures, and regulations that are included in the update. There might be other things as well. There could be drafts of forms. So I mentioned earlier that the maintenance and updating of forms is not part of our full maintenance policy service, and that is true. But we do provide drafts, or what we call reference copies, ref copies, of each form that we are revising our standard version of based on the legislation that necessitated this update. So, and just like your Simbli policy drafts, it'll include an explanation at the beginning, and then it will use color-coded highlighting and strikeout to tell you what we are adding to our standard version of the form and what is being removed from our standard version of the form. Okay. So the purpose of this document is to let you, the board secretary, know what we are doing to our standard form, okay, so that you can then, if you have custom versions of this form, you can then make those changes to your custom versions. But you don't necessarily, if you don't currently maintain custom versions of forms, don't feel like you need to start, because remember, you can always go to the MSBA core manual in your Simbli site and download the most up-to-date standard version of any form whenever you need it, at need. Okay. So what you'll do when we produce a policy update is you'll be able to take a look at this form, and this will tell you what's changing. You don't necessarily need to keep it afterwards. You don't have to let your editor know if the district decides to use the form. All you have to do is know that there's a new version of this form. We have made the changes that are shown using highlight and strikeout to our version. If you have a heavily custom version of your own, you can make those changes. Or if you just, use MSBA's forms and only change maybe the district name, you can go to the MSBA core manual, download a Word version, and just replace like this, where it says district common name, with your district's name. Go to the end of the form, replace the address line with your district's information, and there it is. You've got an up-to-date version of this form that you can use going forward. Okay. We provide this for reference. That's why it's called a reference copy. And then there might be other things as well. Like, for example, we will usually include a letter, an update letter with each update that goes into more detail about what is changing in that update. Okay, so you can see I'm just going to show you the preview version here. These letters are always going to be different, but they will give you a more detailed overview of what's changing in the update. The most important thing that's going to be in every single policy update email is going to be this checklist. And I'm gonna not show you a preview of that. I'll show you one of those in detail here. So when I get this update email, I'm going to look over all of these documents, or provide them to my superintendent for him to look over, or whoever is responsible for that. Then I'm going to open up my checklist in Word. Okay. And when I open this checklist in Word, I can see, first off, I can see a list of all of the documents that are in the update. And then there's going to be pull down menus that I can use to inform my editor of the board's decision with regards to each document. Okay, this is going to be visible if you open this in Word, and most of us have used Microsoft Office these days, so you should have no problem doing that. And there's going to be little pull down menus here that I can then use. So for example, maybe my board reviews BBBB and they decide that they want to adopt that one. They decide they want to adopt that one. Maybe they want to make changes to DFI before they adopt it. So I'd select board adopted with additional revisions. And then I can put in the date that the board held the vote by just typing that in. Okay. So this particular checklist does not have fillable fields for name and date, but we will include those in future checklists. So you guys can just do everything within Word. Once you've marked up what decision the board made, all you have to do is just save this and email it to your editor, and we'll take it from there. In that email, when you send it to your editor, you know, include any additional revisions that the board decides to make. But in the immediate term, what I'm going to do is I can use this checklist to create my packet of documents that I will take to the board. So what I might do here is I might I'm going to switch to just showing my screen here. I might separate my view into so I can see both my Simbli site and my checklist. I can go over here to the print button, click print policies. We're going to turn off everything except drafts. Oops. We're going to leave footnotes, table of contents. We'll type in the watermark draft. Now, you don't have to do this part. This is optional, the watermark and footer text. I'll type in 24D policy update here. And then I'll go down to my checkboxes and I will check only the boxes for the documents that I want to include in my packet. So I know that I've got some in the B section, so I'll check B. I know I've got one in the D section, so I'll check D, G, I, J. Okay. And then when I expand these, then I have the option to check or uncheck any of these docs. I can see that BBBB is one that I'm going to take to the board. So I'm going to uncheck that, uncheck that. We're going to leave BDC checked. And I'm just going to go down and do this for all of my sections. So what I'm doing here is I'm telling Simbli that I only want to print the specific documents that are listed on this checklist. I can do things like if I click the checkbox at the top here of this section, it'll uncheck the entire section. And then I can just check, you know, GCBA, which is on there. In the I section, I only want, let's see here, IGBI, IGCD, and IGCDA. And then in my J section, I want JEA, JED, and JHDF. Okay, so I've checked the boxes for all the documents that are in this this update except for the procedures. Now I know, so I mentioned earlier, the board does not have to vote to make changes to procedures. Some school boards do like to vote on them, however, so you can, you know, you can include those in your packet. I'll go ahead and just check this. Okay, so Success is a K-8 district, so they only have JEDAP1. Okay, once I've got everything checked, I can scroll down here, I click print. Simbli is giving me the opportunity to either stay on this page and wait or continue to work in Simbli while this process is in the background. Shouldn't take too terribly long, so we'll go ahead and leave it. You know what, I'm gonna click continue so you guys can see what the notification looks like. Okay, so yeah, it's already finished. So you can see that the little bell up here now has a number over it. I click here, and then I can just click here to print. Okay, so here we are. You can see I've got my watermark here draft. I've got this identifies my printout as the 24D policy update. I can scroll through here and click on these thumbnails if I want, or I can use the interactive table of contents to click through, and everything that I'm seeing here is a draft. Okay, so this is how I could create a packet that I could then download to email to my board members as a PDF or print to hand out to them. Now, there is another option for giving your board members access to your drafts for an update. I mentioned it earlier, but we'll go over it again. So if your board is tech savvy and you don't think they would have a problem with navigating to the Simbli site and logging in, you can contact your policy editor, and your editor can create a user profile for each board member and then assign them the privileges to see either all drafts or even just some drafts. Okay, so if you only want your board to be able to see the documents from the 24D update, you can request that your editor set that up, set things up that way. And then when your board members log in, they'll see all of your adopted policies, but the drafts they will see will only come from the 24D update. So they could log in, go to policies work in progress, and everything there would be from the 24D update. So that's an option. If you want to pursue that, just email your editor and we'd be happy to set that up for you. Um, but more traditionally, you would email or print out and hand out a packet. And that's how you would create that packet. So basically, then once the board has voted, then you just go to your checklist and you select what all they chose, fill in the dates, save it, and email it back to your editor. And then they will go ahead and clean up all of these drafts. Once the board has approved the draft, that draft is going to disappear and the adopted version will be replaced with whatever that draft changed. So let me just open one of these drafts. We'll talk a little bit about what drafts are and what they look like. So every draft is going to begin with an explanation, which will identify what update it's part of, and then talk about why it's changing, why it exists, and then we'll use red highlight and strikeout to show what's being removed, and green highlight to show what's being added. So basically, when the board looks at this, they can tell the red stuff will be pulled if they adopt this draft. Green stuff will be added. And once the board approves this draft of BBBA, then that draft will disappear and the cleaned up version of this policy will replace the district's existing BBBA and will become visible to the public. So once the board's voted, just remember, once the board's voted, all you have to do is send your editor that checklist and any revisions the board wants to make, and we'll take care of that for you. Okay, so we'll just do a quick refresher on getting clean forms. I mentioned the reference copy of the form earlier. So we did have a form that changed in the 24D update. That'd be form BDDA AF2. So from my Simbli site, I'll go to policies, I'll go to MSBA core manual. Here in my code filter, I'll type in BDDA, and I can tell I'm looking at a form because it'll say AF1 at the end. AF stands for administrative form. So I want to find the revised form that is, let's see here, I forget which one that is. It is the AF2. Okay. So I'll find BDDA AF2, click here on the title. Then I'll click see more, and I can click BDDA AF2, and that will download a Word version of this form that will already include the changes that were shown on that ref copy. And then if I'm the board secretary, I would download the Word version. I would replace district common name with my district's name and information. And then if I want that to be included on my Simbli site, I would then email a PDF of that form, save that form as a PDF, and email it to my editor and just let them know, when that you would like that updated. Just keep in mind when you're doing that, we'll implement it in revised dates here. If you want to keep track of that, those fields are right there. So that's the basics of using Simbli and kind of how you guys are gonna want to work in the system to process policy updates and get them ready for your board review. I just want to close, by saying that your editor is always here to help at any stage. So if you ever have any questions, if you ever want to make like a change to a policy, just contact your editor, and we are more than happy to do that for you and show you, to answer any questions or hop on a Zoom call and demonstrate whatever you need.